that Pokemon? It's Gengar!
Gengar!
So, I have a plan. I got this beanie from Amazon, and I am going to turn it into a Gengar beanie. I've drawn up, traced this little Gengar face, and I'm going to use some fun fabrics that I think will add a little bit more pizzazz to the piece than it just being basic factory embroidery type thing. Now, the person that I am making this for does have a big head. So, the first thing that I did was I steamed this beanie and kind of stretched it out so that when I sew the embroidery onto it, it's not going to heavily distort it because it's already pre-stretched a little bit. I think that'll help a lot. Part of what I think will make this really special is in the red part of the eye for Gengar. I'm going to use this fuzzy, fluffy fabric. So I think maybe it'll look like energy is coming from the eye, or like, not necessarily fire because ghost, dark type, I believe. But I think it'll add a cool visual feature to it. Now I'm gonna have the base out of felt because, like many cartoons, it's got a very dark outline around it, and I want to be able to stitch everything onto this and not directly onto the beanie. So I'm going to do all of the embroidery on this as the base, and then once that's done, I'll cut it out and then sew that to the beanie so that only the felt part is being sewn onto the beanie. Now, to do that, I've pulled out my needlework stretcher bars. I've got 6 inches over here, and I'm going to put those together. I'm going to, I think, add some iron-on interfacing to this because even though I feel like the felt is fairly stable, when you put too much pressure on it, it can distort like that. So I want to keep it as stable as possible while I'm doing all of this applique and embroidery onto it.
After putting together the 6-inch stretcher bars, I'm going to get into my little bag of scrap interfacing that I've got and figure out what size I need. Once I've got that down, I need to cut down my felt square so that it fits on the 6-inch stretcher bars. Interfacing has 2 sides. It's got the bumpy side that has the glued dots that will melt when you iron it, and it's got a flat side, so you want to make sure that you've got the glued dots face down, otherwise you're really going to mess up your iron. Once the felt is stabilized, I'm marking the inside of the stretcher bars on the interfacing so I know what my working space is. My first idea for transferring the design onto the interfacing is to use tracing paper and graphite paper to draw over it and hopefully get the design to show up on the bottom. Unfortunately, that didn't work. Instead, I'm going to use this stick and tear embroidery stabilizer where I can draw directly onto the stabilizer and attach that directly and just sew through it. Since the stick and tear is a little bit transparent, I decided just to draw directly onto it. Now, it's finally time to attach the belt to the stretcher bar, doing my best to keep the tension as even as possible all the way around. To transfer the marks to the other side, I do what's called thread marking, in which I stitch along these lines with a white contrasting thread so I can see it on the other side.
Alright, so I've finished the thread marking. This is what we've got. It looks kind of spooky like this, I'm not gonna lie. I am only doing, for the eyes, the outline part, so that once I have the fluffy fabric on the other side, I'll then thread mark this part so that hopefully it'll actually be visible, or at least a little bit easier to see through the fluff. So that's why I haven't marked that yet. I think I'm going to start with the mouth, since the mouth only is requiring felt, some white felt for the teeth. I think that will be a good place to start. Now, since I want to have a cartoon style black outline both between the teeth and also around it, maybe around it doesn't matter so much, but definitely between the teeth. I think I have to cut the pieces a little bit smaller than they need to be to kind of give a slight gap. Either that, or I guess, go over it with black embroidery thread. I will try.
Deciding that it'll be easier to just have one piece as opposed to several small pieces to fiddle with, I take out the basing stitches that mark out the teeth. I'm gonna go ahead and cut out the eye pieces as well, so I have all 3 main pieces ready to be basted on. Once I draw the piece onto the fabric, I'm using some fray check so that when I cut out the pieces, they're less likely to fray.
The biggest thing I'm not really feeling with this is the pile is going that way, so then that kind of leaves these like bald spots around the edges. The top edge is okay, it gets mostly covered, but I'm not sure how I feel about that yet. I might need to shave it down a little bit because it's maybe a bit excessive.
For all the appliquing, I'm going to do a simple tiny whip stitch. I thread mark where the teeth are going to go so I can see it on the other side. The idea to mark out where the pupils are supposed to go is to use pins to outline the extremities of the shape and trim the fuzz where it's supposed to go. I tried to taper the top a bit so that it blends a little better.
Alright, I'll be totally honest. I could not show how I did the eyes. They're still missing the white eye shine part, the very middle bit there, but it was just so fiddly. I had to try to use the needles that I had pointing upwards as reference points for where the eye began, and just kind of hope for the best. I managed to do it, and regardless, right now I want to give it a little haircut because some of these areas are a bit too much, and I don't want to like completely knock down the fluff because that is part of the whole point of it looking like a spooky, ghosty kind of thing, but I do want to, mostly around the eye and sort of in this inner corner, just kind of knock it down a little bit so that eyes will actually be more visible.
Before I get to the white eye shine, I'm deciding to take off the bulk of the stabilizer. It was very, very tricky to get it off, and I had to use tweezers and a pin to pre-slice it before tearing it off. I actually found that pulling it horizontally rather than vertically helped it tear without distorting the felt. To outline the black of the teeth, I'm using an outline stitch which looks like this, and I guess stem stitch and outline stitch are the same process, just different directions. I didn't know that.
Alright, he's looking pretty good so far. I'm very pleased. You can kind of tell I'm losing some tension here just because I didn't completely get the stabilizer on either side of here. It's stretching as I put pressure on it, but I'm almost done with this portion of it, so I think it'll be fine. That's really spooky. So when you see him, just know that that's his grin. He's gonna bite ya. Yeah. I think what I'm gonna do next is, since the pile of the fuzz is leaning upwards, which I think works for the whole energy idea, I don't like that it leaves some of the base fabric visible. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to use some red thread and just kind of cover over it, but in a purposeful manner. So it'll be clear that it's not part of the fabric, but I want it to kind of blend in. I think that'll give it an interesting texture as well.
So here you can kind of see the difference between where I did it on one and where I haven't done it yet on the other. What I'm hoping it does is just help camouflage some of that base weave a little bit so that it just doesn't stick out as much. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think I should have done more, something different? Can you tell? Was it a waste of time? I don't know. I think that it works, so let's do it now on this side.
Going over it with a matching red embroidered floss to cover the weave of the fabric.
Now what I need to do is I have to cut them out, and I'm still gonna try to cut them out with a black border, but I'm not gonna have that be the definitive cartoonish outline look that I want. I'm using it as a buffer to be able to sew it onto the beanie, but then I think I'll go back through with an outline stitch like how I did for the teeth, and I think that'll just help make all the stitching look really crisp how I'm envisioning it. Same with here, and then also extending the little smile lines and the angry eye lines. Getting close.
Time to remove the pins, holding the fabric to the stretcher bars. Like I mentioned, I'm cutting the pieces out with a bit of a black outline to have space to stitch it onto the beanie. Also, look at this guy. What a silly little face.
That's the preview. They're still not attached, but I was getting excited, so you can really make them have some funky looks. But I have the template here so we can make sure that he gets the proper alignment. Very exciting.
My first idea is to use magnets to hold the pieces in place while I baste them in their positions, but that quickly falls through. So instead, I just trace the positions on with some tailor's chalk and go for it. As I was attaching them to the beanie, I was visited by my best little helper who always wants to be involved, and he's clearly not to be disturbed, so I have to try to work around him, which is challenging. And eventually he wins, and I have to pause. The last bit is just doing the outline stitch around everything, and I'm done.
It is finally done. It honestly went a lot faster than I thought it would. I really underestimate my own skills sometimes, and I really just plow through things when I least expect it. I really, really love how the fuzzy fabric makes it look like energy. It really gives the effect that I was hoping that it would, and I'm so pleased about that. The outlining that I did with an outline stitch to give kind of the what I've been calling his eyeliner, you know, here those lines, and then also the lines that extend from the mouth aren't super visible. I mean, it also is a very dark colored beanie, but I do still think that it kind of cleans it up a little bit, cleans up the edges, gives it a little bit of texture, and just makes it look finished. Now, I made this for my partner, my boyfriend, and he's still a little worried about it not fitting his big head, but I mean, it stretches pretty well. You know, I did steam it beforehand and stretched it to kind of get the fibers loose, and the face doesn't distort at all. So I'm really pleased with how all of that turned out. If I'm being a little bit perfectionist, his face is a little lopsided, or at least it appears lopsided. Maybe just because of the way the fuzzy eyes are, you know, since they kind of go wherever, sometimes it can appear lopsided when it maybe isn't. But I mean, either way, I think it looks really good, and I'm super happy with how it turned out. What do you guys think I should have done differently? Do you like the texture that I used for the eyes? Do
Do you like the techniques that I showed you? Would you do this? Let me know down in the comments.
That looks kind of scary. It kind of looks like Oogie Boogie from Nightmare Before Christmas, doesn't it?